Okay, this is video 3 of the discussion of the arguments against abortion given by Trent Horn at an event at Emory. And I am reporting that I had a hard time knowing what to say about these arguments because I didn't get them in writing or see them in writing. And I just have a hard time engaging in detailed, careful thinking when things aren't in writing. I think many people are like that. So I'm doing that here so you can get some feedback on these arguments if you're interested. So his third set of arguments are arguments from personal identity. And I want to observe at the beginning that the topic of personal identity is a super controversial topic in philosophy. It's a topic in metaphysics, which is a sort of fairly technical, really difficult subfield in philosophy, and it gets really complicated. And the issue is basically, to get the issue going, is kind of like, all right, you used to be 5 years old, right? You are much older now, and you have changed a lot. But how is it that that 5-year-old back in the past was you? Like, what makes you one and the same individual? You know, your body has changed in many important ways. Your thoughts, beliefs have changed in various ways. What explains that you are one and the same individual? You are numerically identical. You are not identical qualitatively. Your qualities have changed, but you've changed a lot. So this is a really hard topic, and I want to sort of recommend some introductions to it if you really want to learn about the topic more. Mike Humer has a great intro book that has a good chapter or section on this, and A Thousand Word Philosophy has 3 articles on it. One, a general introduction to personal identity, which basically observes that your basic answers comes down to, well, I am the same individual over time because I've got the same body, or because I've got the same mind, or because I've got the same soul. And there are possibilities for combining these views also. So, but A Thousand Word Philosophy also has an essay on the view called animalism, which Trent seems to advocate for. So, and then there's a Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy article on animalism. There's lots of good stuff. And actually, the people who have invented animalism or kind of developed it are sort of alive and well. And you could email them and ask them questions. I don't know if they'd like it, but you could do it. So personal identity, again, is a really controversial topic. And here's what Trent has to say. Here is sort of his argument as I recorded it. All right, so if an organism that never... I suppose this sort of say that, it should say ever. If an organism that's existed has never died, the organism still exists. Okay. And then he says, I am essentially, in essence, an organism. He says, here what I am in my essence. I am an organism. If you really wanted to think about this better, you'd have to know, well, what are the options? Well, what else could you be if you're not an organism? And that would really have to be reviewed. So he says, therefore, I am an organism that once existed in my mother's womb and never died, or hasn't died yet. So the idea is if he is an organism in his essence, then whenever there was that organism, he was there. That was him, because he is the organism. He says it's always prima facie wrong to kill me. It's always wrong to kill me unless I got a good reason. And since I existed in my mother's womb, it was prima facie wrong to kill me then. And he says that's true of everybody. What's true of me is true to everybody here. And so abortion is generally prima facie wrong. So this is a pretty abstract argument that depends upon a lot of very abstract things. And I'm going to offer just sort of a simple response. But I'm going to encourage, if you really want to think about this topic, you really got to get sort of up to speed on this complex topic of personal identity and figure out what the various options are. And this is, like many topics, an issue where sort of all the views on the topic have some kind of problems. All of them are kind of challenging in various ways. So I will report that there are surveys on these sorts of things, and animalism, the view that seems to be advocated for here, does not seem to be a super popular view among people who think about these sorts of things. Now, the majority could be wrong, but you'd want to check that out too. Like, what are their reasons? All right, so my simple response to his case is this. I think that a lot of people ultimately deny that they are, in essence, an organism. That is, they would deny that whenever there's this organism that they're associated with or related to, they exist. Why is that? Well, cases like, well, what if you went into a permanent coma, or what if you sort of became brain dead? Would you still exist? Well, many people are going to say, like, well, I sure wouldn't want that to happen to me. If that were to happen to me, I would be a goner. If that happened to somebody you knew, you would be very upset, probably, if you care about them. And why is that? Well, because they are gone. The organism is there, but the person is gone. So that's one quick response to animalism. Also, a lot of people who are religious think that they could survive death, meaning they could continue to exist even if their body, their organism, is destroyed. So if you think that, then you probably don't think you are your organism in essence. Now, somebody could reply that, well, what I think is like God will rebuild my body, and that's a possible view, but I don't know if everybody would have to think that. And then there'd be complications of like, well, what if some of the matter of your body was in somebody else's body? Which of the matter of your body is sort of really essential to you? How does that all work out? Like I said, this is metaphysics, pretty abstract stuff. About premise 9 up here. It is always prima facie wrong to kill me. So again, it seems like there could be cases where it could be okay to let your body die. And if you are your body, it could be okay to let you die. So further thoughts. So if you are your organism, you and your organism are the same thing, and that organism is a person, then again, it sounds like it's okay to let people die. So this kind of builds upon some previous discussion. Yeah. All right. So finally, this argument also assumes that properties that give somebody, here, this should sort of say that give someone the right to life are essential to that organism. And I'll just sort of observe that many animalists deny that. So if you check with people who are animalists and find out, like, do you all oppose abortion? I think you're going to find no, because even if we think that we are essentially organisms, our having the characteristics that make us wrong to kill are not essential to those organisms. That's a possible view. So anyway, this is pretty complicated. And you need to learn more about it if you really want to figure it out. So I am not a metaphysician. I don't really call myself a metaphysician. So here's what Trent has to say about this. He says, well, what if I'm not an organism? What if I am a mind? And again, there are other options here. Like you could be like a mind and a body. You could be a soul. There are other options. But sort of he says that, if we are minds and not organisms, then he said that nobody has ever been raped. Why is that? Well, because that would just affect their body, not them or their minds. Or not. Yeah, I guess the idea is, they are their mind, and this just affected their body. It didn't affect them. Well, I am still sort of unsure what to say about this. I guess I would suggest running this by some animalists and think, people who run it by some animalists. Think, is your view the only view that can explain why rape is a thing? Why rape exists? Why rape exists and why rape is wrong? I think that there is rape and sort of that rape is wrong is kind of like basic data that like every metaphysical view can sort of agree with. So I don't know. I mean, if you really sort of think that the only way you can explain why rape is wrong is appeal to animalism, I guess I'd, write up an article or something like that and see how it goes. Contact an animalist and ask them, does this seem to be true to you? I don't think anybody would think this. So, and, obviously, if you are a mind, that doesn't deny that what happens to your body sort of matters, because you and your mind or your soul and your body are very closely related. So, yeah, I don't know. I think the suggestion that sort of some metaphysical views would have a hard time acknowledging the existence of wrongness of rape is very hard to believe, and yeah. So that's what I would say about that. He says, if I'm not my body, then the government could sort of take my body and tax my body. Again, we are very closely related to our bodies, even if we are, in essence, our minds. Everybody who thinks that, we are our minds or we are our souls agrees with that. I don't know if it matters, but, sometimes the government kind of does take people in their bodies. The draft, sort of imprisoning people, stuff like that. And this all sort of has nothing to do with any sort of abstract metaphysical theories. He says, like, if I'm a collection of thoughts, then I don't think, what would be the thing that's doing the thinking? Well, this is sort of interesting, but, I think the view would basically be that, what is doing the thinking? Well, this sort of collection of mental states. Those mental states are that thinking. So, this is sort of a deep thought. I don't suppose it's some sort of slam dunk against, Descartes' views, Locke's views, Parfit's views, all this sort of tradition of thinking that we are closely related to our minds. We are our minds. So I doubt it. I think kind of a flip side concern can be raised about animalism. If you think you are your body, well, you can lose part of your body, yet still exist. So sort of what part of your body is you? How does that work? One reaction is, well, I'm no particular part of my body. I'm like the whole thing, sort of spatio-temporally connected, even though I could have lost and did lose various parts of my body. So this is all very abstract stuff. If you are your thoughts, what happens to you when you sleep? Well, let me ask you, what happens to you if you go to sleep and you don't wake up? Again, many people would think, well, that's kind of the end of me. I hope that doesn't happen. So where am I when I sleep? Well, I'm right ready to spring back into action when I'm waked up, when you wake me up. Again, I think there are things to say here. Trent mentioned some rights that he had, such as the right to not be tortured or enslaved. Oh, he said he always has had these rights. I thought these were interesting examples because, like, an embryo, and I think he says that he was an embryo doesn't have a right to be tortured or enslaved. I mean, because you can't torture and enslave an embryo. So that sort of doesn't make any sense. If the claim is that, well, all right, I would have any sort of rights that I have the capacities to be harmed about, then you're sort of shifting the discussion to sort of, well, what are your capacities? How can you be harmed? What can you experience? And that's moving away from, look, my organism sort of has these rights. Anyway, these sort of rights these were just rights that an embryo couldn't have. So, I don't know. My general thought is these are really, really abstract issues. And to really understand them well, you got to study them a lot for a long time. So just sort of throwing something out there real quickly to an audience that hasn't studied these issues, has probably never heard of these sorts of issues, doesn't sort of seem to be so great. I'd be interested to see what sort of advocates of animalism think about these arguments. But I think a lot of people would kind of deny this. Oh, so here's some surveys that are interesting from Phil Papers, some surveys of philosophers, personal identity, biological view, psychological view, or another kind of hybrid view. Here we have sort of 15% going for biological view, which might be animalism. So they might be wrong, they might be right, but it takes a lot of work to just understand these views in the first place. All right, so that is that, and I think a lot of these issues here kind of overlap with some of the prior ones. Okay.